Hey everybody, this is Lomi, and this week I'm between projects, so I thought I would take a minute to answer a question that somebody recently asked me that I've been thinking a little bit about. The question was, what would I have done if the doll sculpts that I wanted for my collection hadn't been available? So we're going to take a quick walk through my collection, and I will tell you what sculpts I would have gotten instead if these had not been available at the time of purchase. So as I go through this, some of the dolls that I've chosen actually were my second choice because my first choice wasn't available. Some of those dolls have been long since discontinued, or they're really rare and hard to find. And I think one thing that you'll also see emerging is that I have really definite tastes in which companies I like, and you can also tell a bit about when I entered the hobby based on the dolls that I picked. And I think you can also kind of tell when I entered the hobby based on the dolls that I liked. So first up is Invessie, who everybody loves to hate, and she is currently a Soul Doll Paratisi. Originally she was actually supposed to be Soom Barrel. Unfortunately, Barrel was really hard to find, and since Soom only does occasional, really limited re-releases of dolls, I didn't think I had a good chance of getting her, so you might notice that Invessie's facial features are pretty similar to Barrel's, and especially the expression is very similar, so I think it's a decent replacement. Side by side, what do you think? Next up is Kit, who is still just a faceplate, but Gatinho was actually going to be a Soom Alex. But Alex was a really limited doll, and I've never actually seen a re-release of her, so I knew I was going to have to get something else. When People 65 Ein came along, I thought she would be a really good replacement. Even though I had to do a lot of mods to this faceplate, I'm really happy with how it came together. Alex had really different ears. Next we have Laylee, who is currently shelled as an Ippelhaus Aria. And when I say currently shelled, that's because she was actually originally a Zal Love. And even though I really loved that sculpt, she was too small to fit in with the rest of my crew, and I was never totally satisfied. But even before she was a Zal Love, she was actually originally going to be an Angel Studio Canna. I really love Canna's really soft, sweet face, and I thought she would really suit Laylee well. Ultimately, though, the deciding factor in her becoming an Aria and not Canna was because of Arios. I wanted them to look good together, and I thought Angel Studios dolls were just a little bit too small. Speaking of Arios, he was always going to be an Ippelhaus doll, but he was originally going to be in Ippelhaus Eden. And before that, I had also looked at Shane. When I looked at Shane, I knew I was going to have to modify the nose to make it a little bit stronger. And then when Eden came out, I thought it was a little bit closer, but as soon as I saw Omar, I knew he was going to be the perfect sculpt for this character. So same company, but a very different sculpt. So Lillabelle here, my smallest doll, is actually the first one on the list who was my first choice. I love the Pookie Pookies, they're so cute and tiny, but if I hadn't been able to get Auntie, I probably would have gone for an Obitsu 11, because I really like the idea of painting like the full anime face for something this tiny. But Lillabelle was a gift from my parents, and I'm grateful that they let me decide which sculpt I liked the best before they invested in her. So small. So Lulu, my little feet Chloe, she's another one that was my first choice, and she was actually part of the reason that I ended up picking for all. But if I were to reshell Lulu into a different doll now, I would probably go with either Asleep Idolin Freya, I think is the name of the sculpt, she's really cute. Or I would have gone with a small doll maker, probably with Rowan Doll Victoria, because I have always thought she is just an absolutely adorable USD with beautiful sculpting. But I really like Lulu as a Chloe, so I think that's probably what she's going to stay. Rylan is not wearing a shirt, but he's come a long way, and I'm really happy with how he's coming together. He is a Lottie Doll Blue Ray Christopher, which was my first choice for this doll, but he came really close to being something else because Ray Christopher and all of the Lottie Blues had been out of production for so long, I didn't think I was ever going to find one. I had been all over the internet and hadn't seen any come available for years. So I had kind of resigned myself to the idea I was never going to have this exact doll, and instead I had been looking at minifees. So I was thinking he would either be Altis or Erda. And when I say that knowing that Erda didn't come out until much more recently, but he also had like the lizard parts, so that might have been worth holding out for. And I don't think I would have invested in Altis right away, just because I wasn't completely in love with the sculpt. At the end of the day though, I'm really glad that I was able to bring this Grail doll home. Okay, who else we got? I'm just gonna pick her up standing all so it's easier for me. Lumia. She was my second choice. I originally wanted her to be a Soom Vesuvia, and you can probably kind of see there's a theme in the dolls there. But Vesuvia was another one that was really difficult to find, so I ended up going for the Impel Doll Lydia instead. In the end, I've been really happy with this choice. I think she really suits the character well. So, Vaughn. My Impel House Claude. This is probably going to be cheating, but if I had to get a different doll to be him, I probably would have gotten Impel House Eric, because they are almost the same doll. When they announced Eric, I was actually a little bit unhappy because I had really crunched my budget to be able to get Vaughn because Claude was supposed to be an extremely limited release. And then immediately after, they released Eric, who was almost identical, close enough that I would have been happy with him, and he was going to be available all the time, so I wouldn't have had to work so hard. But ultimately, I'm really happy that I did get Claude. I think his nose is just like a tiny bit wider in the bridge. But I had another fallback for him. If I hadn't been able to get this guy, I probably would have gone with Ramcube Ruin, who is a doll that I don't really see a whole lot, and I think it's because he's been out of production for a bit, so he's a little bit harder to come by. He's a little bit more serious in the expression, but I think he would have made a really good Vaughn. He's pretty and he knows it. Pearl was an incredibly hard decision because I couldn't decide if I wanted People 65 Chloe or Cyan. I have no idea how you say that name. But it was really a close toss-up between the two of them. Ultimately, what tilted me in favor of getting Chloe was that I could get the little fee Chloe to match for Lulu, and that way they would definitely look alike, and I really loved that idea. So at this point, I think Rune has been a pot of doll soup for almost a year, and I feel really bad about that, but I'm really hopeful that his head is going to be cast very soon. So his original head was Impel House Luo, and I chose it because it seemed like the best option out of the EIDs, which was the only really realistic, very masculine buff doll at the time. I'm not sure that that would be what I would get now because we have a lot more options, but this was never my first choice, and I probably won't ever shell him as anything else now that I have the head that I'm custom sculpting that I'm actually hoping to cast before the end of the month. Somebody really needs to hold me to that. But if any doll that was available now had been available then, I think I probably would have gone for Granado Gabriel instead. So for this one you get close up of this head, and I'm gonna grab the other. And that's the one I'm making. He's so close. So that's it for my collection, and now I want to extend a special invitation. If you do videos on YouTube about your dolls, try putting together your own video about the dolls that you picked and what you would reshell them as if that doll hadn't been an option, because I would love to see. You can share that as a response to this video, or you can drop a link to it in the comments. And if you don't do videos, you're welcome to just leave a comment too, because I'd love to hear your opinions, and I think this would be a great thing to explore together as a community so that we can really learn each other's tastes. But that's it for me. I have sculpting to finish and a commission that needs to be wrapped up, and Rylan still needs a shirt, so I'm going to get to work on that, and hopefully I'll have one of those more fun updates for you next week. Thanks for joining me again. Bye.